Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your source material and really uncover the most compelling insights. Today, we're delving into Brené Brown's The Gifts of Imperfection. And this goes far beyond typical self-help.
Oh, absolutely.
It's really an invitation to a kind of quiet revolution starting inside each of us.
Yeah.
Our aim today is to unpack the journey, the details really, of embracing who you truly are and letting go of who you think you're supposed to be. We'll explore some of the unexpected connections and, the practical ways this path can be really rich and transformative for you.
And what's so fascinating, I think, is how Brené Brown, coming from that researcher background, she just meticulously uncovers these subtle patterns in how we behave.
Right, the subtleties.
Yeah, she gives us this really clear, almost actionable look at emotions and practices. It helps us grasp not just the big ideas, but the practical mechanics, how they actually play out in our lives day to day.
The mechanics.
So this deep dive should offer some, pretty clear guidance for navigating things like vulnerability, shame, and that whole pursuit of a more authentic existence.
The researcher's unexpected journey.
Okay, so let's maybe start with the author's own path into this material, because she describes herself as a meaning-making species, right? Always looking for those subtle connections, relationships, and patterns.
A classic researcher. Pattern hunting, as she calls it.
Exactly. But then she hits this point, November 2006, where she finds something in her own research that she just desperately wants to unsee.
Wow.
What was that? What was so jarring for her?
Well, it really brings up a powerful question, doesn't it? What happens when your professional work, your expertise, just slams right into your personal reality?
Yeah.
For her, she had spent years studying these really tough emotions, shame, fear, vulnerability. She'd even, developed a whole shame resilience curriculum, wrote that book, I Thought It's Just Me. And then she uncovered these new, completely unexpected patterns. She'd gathered thousands of stories, a huge range of people, 18 to 87. And yeah, sure, she saw the struggles with shame, the fear of not being enough.
Which she expected, probably.
Right, that was familiar territory. But she also kept seeing these stories of people living these amazing and inspiring lives. And that was the part that gave her, as she puts it, sticker shock. She actually remembers sort of murmuring, no, how can this be?
Wow. So she clearly had some preconceived idea about what these wholehearted people, as she calls them, looked like. What was her assumption there?
Oh, definitely. She really believed that wholehearted people were just like me. Working super hard, following all the rules, making sure everything was done right, always trying to know herself better, raising her kids completely by the books.
Very controlled, very planned.
Exactly. That reflection on her own kind of meticulous by-the-book style is really central. But the big, shocking realization she had sitting there at her breakfast table looking at this data was that, okay, knowing and understanding ourselves is important, yes. But loving ourselves, that's even more essential for wholehearted living.
Loving ourselves over just knowing.
Yeah. Knowledge is valuable, absolutely. But, and this is the key phrase, only if we're being kind and gentle with ourselves. It hit her hard. Like you described it almost like getting devastating news, tears hand over her mouth kind of moment.
And it sounds like one of the biggest impacts, one of the most difficult details for her, hit close to home as a parent.
Yes. The data just made it totally undeniably clear.
Yeah.
We cannot give our children what we don't have. Her own journey, her own struggles and successes with living and loving wholeheartedly, that was a much stronger predictor of parenting success than anything she could find in any how-to books.
That's a tough realization for any parent.
Huge. And it really underscores the depth of her personal struggle, right? And the direct implications for her family. She actually describes feeling like her own life, her own struggles, were perfectly described by the don't lists she'd compiled from the research data. She literally wrote me under that list and felt like she was living straight down the shit list.
Ooh. So she calls this whole personal confrontation a midlife unraveling, not a crisis. She defines it as, a time when you feel a desperate pull to live the life you want to live, not the one you're supposed to live. And that led her to therapy, right, with Diana in 2007.
Sort of that deep soul work.
What other kinds of life events besides midlife can trigger that kind of unraveling? And what were the specific details around her own experience?
Well, the source lists quite a few of these potential wake-up calls.
Yeah.
It's not just midlife. It could be marriage, divorce, becoming a parent, recovery from addiction, a big move, empty nest, retiring, loss or trauma, even just being stuck in a soul-sucking job.
Things that shake up your reality.
Exactly. She makes this great observation. The universe is not short on wake-up calls. We're just quick to hit the snooze button.
Ah, so true.
For her own unraveling, that moment in November 2006, it was sparked by this specific mix of things happening all at once. She said she was feeling raw from being newly sugar and flour-free.
Okay, so physically vulnerable, maybe?
Yeah, and it was nearing her birthday, which can be a reflective time anyway. She was totally burned out from work and just generally on the cusp of that whole midlife shift. These specific details, they really paint a picture of this accumulated stress just reaching a boiling point. It created the perfect storm almost for a breakthrough.
And this wasn't like an instant light bulb moment and everything's fine. It sounds like it was a real process. Difficult.
Oh, absolutely not instant. The journey was messy and deep. That's how she describes it. She talks about slogging through it. Until one day, she says, exhausted and with mud still wet and dripping off of her traveling shoes, she felt this profound shift.
Wow, what a visual.
Isn't it? She started to feel joyful and real. Still scared, she admits, but also really brave, feeling calmer and grounded. She emphasizes, something has changed. I can feel it in my bones. Moving from being constantly anxiety-ridden to genuinely feeling healthier, more grateful.
So this really intense personal experience directly fed back into her research, her writing. She needed a guidebook, she said, for soul travelers. And she realized that cultivating this wholehearted life, it's not like arriving somewhere, it's like walking toward a star in the sky.
Yeah, always guiding you, but never quite reachable in a final sense.
Right. And these gifts, she talks about courage, compassion, connection, they only work when they are exercised every day. It's not a checklist.
No, not a to-do list at all. It's life work, soul work, as she puts it, an ongoing, sustained practice.
So it starts with belief for her.
Exactly. Her process started with belief first. Then she started seeing how people, families, communities could actually change by living and loving with their whole hearts. She feels it's an honor to share that journey. And that realization, that experience, really set the stage for the practical tools she eventually developed. That process she now calls the dig deep method.
Dig deep.
Yeah. Get deliberate, get inspired, and get going. It's about being really intentional about what you want or need, finding things that truly inspire you towards that, and then taking action. It's different from just, gritting your teeth and pushing through when you're totally depleted.
Okay, deliberate, inspired, going.
Yeah, she gives an example of mindlessly scrolling online when she felt overwhelmed, but using Dig Deep helped her deliberately choose actual relaxation instead, which, surprise, surprise, actually worked.
The core elements of wholehearted living: courage, compassion, and connection.
Okay, so let's get into the core of it. Wholehearted living, defined as engaging in our lives from a place of worthiness. Cultivating courage, compassion, connection, so you can genuinely feel I am enough,
Right.
regardless of what you achieve or don't achieve.
Exactly. It's about accepting the imperfection, the vulnerability, but still seeing yourself as brave and worthy of love. And crucially, it's a process, like you said, a journey of a lifetime.
Not a destination.
Definitely not destinations. They're continuous practices, like virtues,
Sure.
things you cultivate through consistent action, woven right into the fabric of your daily life.
Okay, so let's unpack these three core elements, starting with courage. It's a huge theme for her. What's the deeper meaning, the historical detail that she brings out?
The etymology, the word origin, is really insightful here. Courage comes from the Latin cor, meaning heart.
Heart.
Yeah. And its earliest definition was totally different from how we mostly think of it now. It was to speak one's mind by telling all one's heart.
Wow. Telling your whole heart, not just being heroic.
Exactly. It contrasts so sharply with our modern idea of courage being, synonymous with heroics. And that distinction is vital. Heroics is often about putting our life on the line. Ordinary courage is about putting our vulnerability on the line.
Putting vulnerability on the line.
Which she argues in today's world, that's actually pretty extraordinary. She gives this specific example from her research, these moms at school who started sharing their stories of imperfection and vulnerability with each other. That was them practicing this ordinary courage just by being authentic, being open about their struggles. Like the mom who managed to stay calm even when her daughter was really acting out.
Okay, so it's about showing up authentically. Now, compassion. We all want more of it, right? But the book says practicing it is daring, and usually not typically our first response to suffering. The Latin roots, pati and cum, mean to suffer with. So why isn't that our default? What do we usually do when faced with pain, ours or someone else's.
Well, our initial reflex often is self-protection.
Makes sense.
Yeah, we try to self-protect by immediately looking for someone or something to blame, or we jump to judgment, or we go straight into fix-it mode. And that tendency, that need to shield ourselves, frequently blocks genuine compassion.
So we block the suffering with.
Exactly. She references Pema Chodron's work here, emphasizing that cultivating real compassion means drawing from the wholeness of our experience, our suffering, our empathy, as well as our cruelty and terror. It's about seeing ourselves in the other person, right? A relationship between equals. Only when we know our own darkness well can we be present with the darkness of others. Compassion becomes real when we recognize our shared humanity.
Knowing our own darkness.
Yeah. And her sister, Ashley, actually modeled this beautifully in one story. When Brené was struggling, Ashley didn't try to fix it or judge her. She just connected with the struggle, shared some of her own stuff. That's the suffering with. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But then she makes this connection that feels, well, almost counterintuitive. The link between compassion and boundaries. How did she find that? And what does that specific detail tell us about real compassion?
Honestly, she says she was stunned when she found this. The data showed that the truly committed compassion practitioners were also the most boundary-conscious people.
Wow.
She says it flat out. Compassionate people are boundaried people. And that insight was totally transformative for her. The logic behind it, though, makes sense when you unpack it. The heart of compassion is really acceptance.
Okay.
And it's incredibly hard to accept people, truly accept them, when they're constantly hurting us or taking advantage of us or walking all over us.
Right, you build resentment.
Exactly.
That's
Without clear boundaries, without accountability, we get trapped in that cycle she calls rage, blame, too tired and busy to follow through.
I know that cycle. Right. The corporate leader story she tells is a perfect illustration. He had this protocol everyone was supposed to follow, but when she asked about consequences for not following it, he just said, I don't talk about the consequences. They know they're supposed to follow the protocol.
Which means no real consequences.
Pretty much. And that lack of clarity, that lack of follow-through leads to zero accountability and eventually just breeds resentment in the leader.
So it's not about being mean or harsh with boundaries. It's about clarity.
Precisely. The source makes it clear. We can confront someone about their behavior or fire someone or fail a student or discipline a child without berating them or putting them down. The absolute core principle, the key detail here, is to separate people from their behaviors, to address what they're doing, not who they are.
That's a huge distinction, what they're doing, not who they are.
It's profound, isn't it? Because when we fail to set boundaries, we often end up feeling used and mistreated. And then our reaction tends to attack who they are rather than just their actions. You simply cannot practice compassion from a place of simmering resentment.
Makes total sense.
The example she gives of yelling at her kids about clothes on the floor instead of actually enforcing a consequence like no allowance or whatever, it just drives it home. Our lack of follow-through tells them the request wasn't actually that important.
Okay, last of the three, connection. Described as the energy that surges between people. And she's clear, this surge must travel in both directions.
Two-way street.
But she also points out that technology often gives us this kind of imposter for connection. We end up confusing being communicative with feeling connected. What are some of those subtle ways we miss out on the real thing?
Yeah, that's a big one. Just because we're plugged in doesn't mean we feel seen and heard. This hyper-communication paradoxically means we might spend more time on Facebook than we do face-to-face.
Or even face-to-face, but still plugged in.
Right. That image she paints of the two parents on their phones while their kids are texting or on devices right there at the same restaurant table. It's striking, isn't it? It makes you ask, what's the point of even sitting together?
Yeah.
And she gets personal here, too, sharing her own struggle. For years, she derived her self-worth from never needing help and always offering it. She valued being the helper.
A strong one.
Exactly. She admits she would have never called my siblings to ask them for help, especially for support during a shame storm, blocking that inbound energy.
Wow. That's a really powerful personal detail. It shows how we can shut down connection even when we think we're being, generous or strong.
Absolutely. It was her own breakdown, her own unraveling that finally forced her to reach out to ask her younger brother and sisters for help. And doing that, she says, completely shifted our family dynamics. It allowed her siblings to step up, to share their strength and incredible wisdom.
So it opened up that two-way flow.
Precisely.
Yes.
It shows the vulnerability that's required for genuine connection. You have to be willing to receive as well as give. This wholehearted journey, she emphasizes, It is not the path of least resistance. It's a path of consciousness and choice. And yeah, maybe a little counterculture. It really requires you to be all in, embracing the messiness, the uncertainty of being truly seen and known.
Understanding worthiness and its barriers, shame, perfectionism, and the hustle.
Okay, let's talk about worthiness. Diane Ackerman wrote, "Love is the most important thing in our lives, and yet we're reluctant to linger over its names." And Brené Brown tells us that love and belonging are essential to the human experience. The only thing, she says, separating people who feel it from those who struggle, it's the belief in their own worthiness. She says, it's as simple and complicated as this. If we want to fully experience love and belonging, we must believe that we are worthy of love and belonging. That feels huge, foundational.
It absolutely is. It's a core truth, woven deep into what it means to be human. And the book really hammers this home. Worthiness doesn't have prerequisites.
No prerequisites. I like that.
Yeah. She gives this great list of common worthiness prerequisites, those subtle, often unconscious conditions we put on our own self-worth, on our right to feel loved and like we belong. Things like, I'll be worthy when I lose 20 pounds.
Oh, yeah.
Or if I stay sober, if everyone thinks I'm a good parent, when I make partner, if he calls back, when I can finally do it all and look like I'm not even trying.
That last one is brutal.
Isn't it? The really powerful declaration, the heart of wholeheartedness is this. Worthy now, not if, not when. We are worthy of love and belonging now, right this minute, as is. That statement just dismantles all that conditional self-worth we build up.
Worthy now, as is. Okay. She also draws this really interesting connection between love and shame. We desperately want love. We desperately want to avoid shame, but we avoid talking about both. What's behind that avoidance? And can you explain that crucial difference she makes between fitting in and truly belonging?
Yeah, it's a fascinating paradox, right? We crave love, we fear shame, yet we sidestep discussing either one. She suggests maybe we're afraid of topics like love and shame. Most of us like safety, certainty, and clarity. Shame and love are grounded in vulnerability and tenderness.
So it's the vulnerability again.
It always comes back to vulnerability, doesn't it? That fear often keeps us from engaging more deeply. And that distinction between fitting in and belonging, it's critical for you to think about because it shapes so many of our daily interactions. She said most of us use the terms fitting in and belonging interchangeably, but they're really different. Fitting in is about assessing a situation and becoming who you need to be accepted.
Changing yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas belonging doesn't require us to change who we are. It requires us to be who we are. That's such a key insight for this whole authenticity journey. Fitting in can actually be a form of self-portrayal, just for temporary approval.
Wow.
And the truths she offers about love and belonging are that they will always be uncertain. There are no guarantees. And also that love belongs with belonging. They're intrinsically linked, so tightly woven together.
Yeah.
It's not an accidental entanglement. It's an intentional knot.
Okay, so let's get into shame itself. She shares this very specific, detailed story about bombing a talk years ago. A shame storm, she calls it. Feeling small, heart racing, those physical symptoms, dry mouth, time slowing down, tunnel vision, hot face.
Yeah, the physiology of shame is intense.
Right. And she recognized that painful, slow motion reel of negative self-talk starting up. What was the counterintuitive thing she learned to do? And maybe even more importantly, who should you not reach out to when you're in that vulnerable state?
The best thing to do, counterintuitively, is to reach out to someone trusted. Share the story. But, and this is crucial, the source gives a very clear, very detailed list of who not to share with during a shame storm. Because the wrong person can just become more flying debris, making things worse.
Okay, who's on the list?
All right, number 1. The friend who feels shame for you, they gasp, look horrified, and basically make you comfort them. They just confirm how awful you should feel.
Oh, dear.
2, the friend who offers sympathy, oh, you poor thing, bless your heart, instead of actual empathy, which sounds more like, I get it, I feel with you, and I've been there. It's that subtle but vital difference between pity and real connection.
Sympathy versus empathy. Got it.
3, the friend who needs you to be perfect and is just too disappointed in your imperfections, like you've personally let them down by messing up.
Ouch.
4, the friend who's super uncomfortable with vulnerability themselves, they might scold you, how could you let this happen? Or immediately start looking for someone else to blame who did this to you. We'll kick his ass.
Deflecting.
Exactly. 5, the friend who tries to make it better by completely minimizing or denying your experience. No, you're exaggerating. It wasn't that bad. You rock. You're perfect, which isn't helpful.
Right, invalidating.
And number 6, The friend who immediately one-ups you with their own story. That's nothing. Listen to what happened to me one time.
Making it about them. Okay, that's a really useful list of don'ts.
It really is. And by contrast, her sister Ashley's response in that story was a model of empathy. She just listened, responded with total compassion, connected it to her own struggles with worthiness, and said things like, "Oh man, that's so hard. I've done that dance. I hate that feeling."
Simple, connecting statements.
Yeah. Ashley didn't try to fix me or make me feel better. She just listened and had the courage to share some of her own vulnerabilities with me. And that, Brené says, leads to the definition of true empathy. Being totally exposed and completely loved and accepted at the same time.
Wow. Okay, this leads us to another really crucial distinction she makes. Shame versus guilt. People mix these up all the time, but she's very precise about it.
Oh, this is absolutely vital. It underpins so much of her work. The core difference is guilt, I did something bad. Shame, I am bad.
I did something bad versus I am bad.
Exactly. Guilt is about our behavior. And while it feels uncomfortable, it can actually be helpful. It motivates us towards positive change, apologizing, making amends, changing the behavior. Shame, on the other hand, attacks our very identity. It corrodes the part of us that believes we can change and do better.
It makes you feel hopeless.
Yes, and it's linked to all sorts of destructive outcomes. Violence, aggression, depression, addiction, eating disorders, bullying. She argues strongly that shame doesn't keep us in line like some people think. It actually pushes us towards those destructive behaviors. That's why understanding it, recognizing it, and building resilience is so critical.
So how do we build that shame resilience? What are the steps?
She outlines 4 specific elements, 4 practices. First, understanding your own shame triggers. What messages, what situations, what expectations tend to activate shame for you?
Knowing your triggers. Second, practicing critical awareness. That means reality checking those messages and expectations that tell us being imperfect means we're fundamentally inadequate. Questioning the messages.
Right.
Third, reaching out, sharing your stories, but with trusted people, the ones who respond with empathy, not the ones on that don't share list.
Finding your empathy circle.
Exactly. And fourth, speaking shame. Actually using the word shame, talking about how you're feeling, and asking clearly for what you need from others.
Naming it. Okay.
She uses this great analogy of the swampland of the soul. Shame is like that swampland, an important place to visit, but you would not want to live there. And this idea of just wanting a how-to guide is like looking for a seductive shortcut that tries to bypass the swamp altogether. But we often already know how to do things, eat healthy, manage money, whatever. Yet we still struggle. We still long for joy and connection. The real issue often isn't the lack of knowledge. It's getting stuck in that isolating swamp of shame. That makes sense. She also talks about the hustle for worthiness, calling it a cacophony of shame tapes and gremlins. What kind of specific things do these gremlins whisper?
Oh, they have a whole repertoire. Specific messages like, what will people think? That's a big one.
Huge.
Or, you can't really love yourself yet. You're not enough. And that blank can be filled with almost anything society values, right? Pretty enough, skinny enough, successful enough, rich enough, talented, happy, smart, feminine, masculine, productive, nice, strong, tough, caring, popular, creative, well-liked, admired, contributing enough. The list is endless.
Wow.
They also whisper things like, no one can find out about Ailed. Or, I'm just going to pretend that everything is okay. I can change to fit in if I have to. Who do you think you are to put your thoughts, certainties, beliefs writing out in the world? And a really insidious one. Taking care of them is more important than taking care of me.
That hits home for a lot of people, I bet. There's also this specific anecdote about an EGAD's photography email. It really drives home how deep shame can hide. What did that reveal?
Right, the photography incident. She had this critical email about her photos. When she told the story to her students later, one student asked this incredibly insightful question. Basically, was the shame really about the bad picture? Or was it about the vulnerability of putting yourself out there, letting yourself be open to connection, and then getting hurt?
Getting to the deeper layer.
Exactly. And Brené said that question immediately triggered all the physical shame symptoms, dry mouth, sweating. It illuminated the deeper source. It wasn't about the photos themselves. It was about the profound vulnerability of opening up to connection and then feeling wounded.
That's powerful. Okay, and to round out shame, she talks about specific ways we disconnect when we feel shame.
Yes, she uses Dr. Linda Hartling's framework, which is based on Karen Horney's work. It outlines 3 main strategies of disconnection. First, move away. That's withdrawing, hiding, silencing ourselves, keeping secrets.
Pulling back.
Second, move toward. This is appeasing, people-pleasing, trying to earn connection by being indispensable or agreeable.
Trying to please your way out.
And third, move against. This involves trying to gain power over others by being aggressive, using shame to fight shame, or attacking.
Fighting fire with fire.
Right. Recognizing these patterns, and even the physical symptoms, like the hot face or racing heart, allows for a more intentional response. She talks about learning to take maybe 10, 15 minutes to pull myself together, maybe pray or just breathe, instead of instantly reacting out of that shame.
Buying yourself time.
Exactly. And it comes back to that crucial question you need to ask yourself. Who has earned the right to hear my story? Having even just one person or that small group of confidants you can turn to, that makes all the difference. If you have that, she says, you're incredibly fortunate.
Okay, let's shift slightly to perfectionism. A reader asked her, P.S. Shame and perfectionism aren't related, are they? Common thought, maybe, but her answer is unequivocal. Where perfectionism exists, shame is always a silent partner.
Yeah.
Let's really unpack that connection.
Yeah, it's a critical link. Perfectionism is not the same as striving to be your best. It's not about healthy achievement or growth.
Okay, what is it then?
Perfectionism, she defines it as, is the belief that if we live perfect, look perfect, and act perfect, we can minimize or avoid the pain of blame, judgment, and shame. It's a shield.
A shield against shame.
Exactly. But she calls it a 20-ton shield. It doesn't actually protect you, it just weighs you down and prevents you from being seen. Overcoming it means, first, acknowledging your vulnerability to shame, judgment, blame, then developing that shame resilience we just talked about, and finally, actively practicing self-compassion. And it's a continuum, right? It affects everyone to some degree.
Can you give some concrete examples? Like, how does perfectionist self-talk sound different from healthy striving?
Yes, the comparison she provides is really helpful for seeing the difference in detail. Perfectionism might sound like, ugh, nothing fits. I'm fat and ugly. I'm ashamed of how I look. I need to be different than I am right now to be worthy of love and belonging. See the shame and the conditional worthiness.
Yeah, it's harsh, judgmental.
Totally. Whereas healthy striving sounds more like, okay, I want this for me. I want to feel better and be healthier. The scale doesn't dictate if I'm loved and accepted. If I believe that I'm worthy of love and respect now, I will invite courage, compassion, and connection into my life. I want to figure this out for me. I can do this.
Much kinder. Focused on the process, on self-worth now.
Exactly. That distinction is pivotal for catching ourselves. And she has this funny line. For her, perfectionism didn't lead to results. It led to peanut butter. Just showing how self-defeating it often is.
Right. And she brings in Dr. Kristen Neff's work on self-compassion here. How does Neff break that down?
Dr. Neff identifies 3 key elements. 1, self-kindness. Pretty straightforward, treating ourselves with care and understanding, especially when we fail or feel inadequate, instead of that harsh self-judgment.
Being kind to yourself.
2, common humanity. This is about recognizing that suffering and personal inadequacy are part of the shared human experience.
Yeah.
It's that feeling of, I'm not alone in this. It counters that isolation shame brings.
We all struggle.
3, mindfulness. This means taking a balanced approach to negative emotions. Observing them without suppressing them, but also without exaggerating them or getting swept away by negative reactivity. Just holding them with awareness.
Aware, but not overwhelmed.
Exactly. And Brené shares her own sloppy hack email story. She misspelled someone's name and shows how quickly perfectionism can trigger judgment, both of herself, why was I so sloppy, and potentially of the other person. She consciously practiced self-compassion, reminding herself, be kind to yourself, Brené. This is not a big deal. It highlights how perfectionism isn't just internal. It touches everyone around us. We pass it down to our children.
The transformative power of practice. Going beyond supposed to.
Okay, moving into the practice is the guideposts. Authenticity. She says it's not something you have or don't have. It's a practice, a conscious choice of how we want to live.
A daily choice.
The daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we are. That sounds huge, especially in a culture that tells us so much about who we're supposed to be. What does that daily choice actually involve in specific terms?
Well, choosing authenticity, according to Brown, means actively doing these things. Cultivating the courage to be imperfect, to set those boundaries we talked about, to allow yourself to be vulnerable. Exercising compassion, the kind that comes from knowing deep down that we are all made of strength and struggle. Both things exist in everyone. And nurturing those connections that eventually allow our true selves, our imperfect selves, to be seen and known.
Courage, compassion, connection again.
They're the foundation, she quotes E. E. Cummings. To be nobody but yourself in a world which is doing its best. To make you everybody but yourself means to fight the hardest battle. Staying real is a courageous battle.
And there's pushback, right, when you try to be authentic.
Oh yeah, the pushback is real. It can range from subtle things like eye rolls and whispers to relationship struggles and feelings of isolation. She points out specific same triggers around authenticity, too. For women, speaking out often brings up internal conflict. Don't make people feel uncomfortable, but be honest. Don't upset anyone, but say what's on your mind. Don't say anything unpopular, but have the courage to disagree.
That impossible bind.
Exactly. For men, the struggle often revolves around those rigid gender expectations needing to seem in control, not out of control.
And she includes a pretty stark warning about not choosing authenticity.
She does. The warning label reads, if you trade in your authenticity for safety, you may experience the following: anxiety, depression, eating disorders, addiction, rage, blame, resentment, and inexplicable grief.
Wow. Those are serious consequences for trying to fit in.
They really are. And the dig deep mantra she offers for authenticity provides a powerful counterimage. Don't shrink, don't puff up, stand on your sacred ground.
Don't shrink, don't puff up.
Right. Don't make yourself small to make others comfortable, but also don't put up false armor or bravado as a defense. Just occupy your own space authentically.
Okay, next guidepost, gratitude and joy. This deep dive reveals that she found joyful people were grateful people. Not just a coincidence, but a real connection where joyfulness comes from gratitude practice.
Practice being the key word.
And crucially, she calls both of these spiritual practices, linking them to interconnectedness and something larger than ourselves. What's the detailed difference she draws between plain old happiness and this deeper sense of joy?
The Greek origins she explores offer really fascinating details here. Happiness, the word makarios, originally described the freedom the rich had from everyday worries or just general good fortune, having money, health. So it's fundamentally tied to circumstance. It's connected to external situations and events, and it seems to ebb and flow as those externals change.
Happiness depends on what's happening to you.
Pretty much. Whereas joy, the word chairo, was described as the culmination of being, the good mood of the soul. It was seen as something found only in God or coming through virtue and wisdom. And interestingly, its opposite isn't sadness, but fear.
Joy's opposite is fear. Interesting.
Yeah. Joy, in this sense, is constantly tethered to our hearts by spirit and gratitude. It's more internal, more stable. And the key, again, is practice. Gratitude without practice, she says, may be a little like faith without works. It's not alive.
Like having the yoga pants but never going to class.
Exactly. That's the analogy she uses. You need the actual practice. And concrete gratitude practices can be simple things. Keeping a journal, doing meditations, saying prayers, making gratitude art, even just pausing during a busy day to say, I am grateful for, out loud. It's about actively cultivating it.
And this ties into Lynn Twist's idea of scarcity versus sufficiency.
Yes, perfectly. Lynn Twist's concept helps frame why gratitude is so important. Scarcity is that pervasive mindset of not enough, I don't have enough time, not thin enough, not smart enough, not rich enough, not productive enough. We go to bed focusing on what we didn't get done. It's a mindset where we're starving from a lack of gratitude.
Starving from lack of gratitude. Powerful.
Sufficiency, on the other hand, isn't about having a certain amount of stuff. It's a knowing that there is enough and that we are enough. It's a fundamental shift in perspective. And a really poignant detail she shares is that people who had experienced tremendous loss, they often held the ordinary, everyday moments as the most sacred. They urged others not to take those simple things for granted. It highlights the profound value hiding in the seemingly insignificant details of life.
Okay, next we confront our need for certainty. The book says faith and reason are not natural enemies. It's our human need to be right, our fear of being wrong, that creates the conflict. So how does she define faith in this context? How does it relate to letting go of that need for certainty?
Based on her research with people living these wholehearted lives, she defines faith as a place of mystery, where we find the courage to believe in what we cannot see and the strength to let go of our fear of uncertainty.
Letting go of the fear of uncertainty, that's tough.
It really is. And she points out that, paradoxically, many forms of fundamentalism and extremism are about choosing certainty over faith. She quotes the theologian Richard Rohr, who said, "How strange that the very word faith has come to mean its exact opposite."
Wow. Certainty is the opposite of faith.
It turns our usual understanding on its head, suggesting that demanding rigid, absolute answers might actually undermine true faith, which inherently involves mystery and trust. Living wholeheartedly requires some believing without seeing, because, let's face it, most of us want assurances before we risk being vulnerable and getting hurt.
We want guarantees.
Exactly. The dig deep practice for this guidepost involves getting quiet and still enough to actually hear what you're thinking and feeling, finding inspiration in writers who explore faith and doubt. She mentions Anne Lamott, Pema Chodron, Paulo Coelho, and using tools like the Serenity Prayer to help calm those intense cravings for certainty.
Okay. Creativity. She shares these really vivid childhood memories of being creative in New Orleans, painting, crafts, cooking, even weird crawfish boil cookies.
Yeah.
But then the memories just stop around age 8 or 9. And this coincides with moving to a Houston suburb where everything was about appearances, houses like hotel lobbies having the right cute clothes. What's the link she makes between that shift and losing creativity?
Yeah.
And what gets in the way for us as adults?
The shift to Houston, she realized, introduced this stifling combination of fitting in and being better than. In other words, comparison.
Comparison again.
Yeah.
The thief of joy, they say.
And the thief of creativity, too, apparently. Comparison is all about conformity and competition. It creates this crushing paradox of fit in and stand out, be like everyone else, but somehow better. We end up comparing ourselves to our immediate group, our neighbors, wanting to be the best of our group, not necessarily aiming for some objective standard.
Keeping up with the Joneses, but also being slightly ahead.
Exactly. And she admits that as an adult, she developed this real disdain for creativity, seeing it as self-indulgent at best and flaky at worst. She now recognizes that was probably a shame trigger, maybe connected to mourning that lost part of herself.
So what did her research actually reveal about creativity in wholehearted people?
Her findings here are really pivotal, I think.
There's no such thing as creative people and non-creative people. There are only people who use their creativity and people who don't. And unused creativity, it lives within us until it's expressed, neglected to death, or suffocated by resentment and fear.
Whoa! Suffocated by fear. That's a strong warning.
Isn't it? Second finding. The only unique contribution that we will ever make in this world will be born of our creativity, whatever form that takes.
A unique contribution comes from creativity. Okay.
And third, if we want to make meaning, we need to make art. And art is defined really broadly here. She lists things like cook, write, draw, doodle, paint, scrapbook, take pictures, collage, knit, rebuild an engine, sculpt, dance, decorate, act, sing. It doesn't matter. It's about the act of creation.
Anything where you're making something new.
Exactly. Her own transformation involved taking a gourd painting class, kind of forcing herself back into it, and also reframing her research itself as a creative act connecting the seemingly unconnected. Letting go of comparison is the key, and it requires constant awareness. Creativity reminds us that what we uniquely bring is completely original and cannot be compared. She also mentions how the cracks in things are how the light gets in a reminder that our imperfections aren't flaws in our creative expression.
Okay, play and rest. This section starts with a funny detail, her childhood confusion about what fooling around meant for grown-ups. It led her to discover how vital play is. Dr. Stuart Brown, who founded the National Institute for Play, says something striking. The opposite of play is not work. The opposite of play is depression.
Wow.
How does that counterintuitive idea about play connect to our busy modern lives? And what about rest?
Well, Brown argues play isn't just a nice to have, it's a fundamental biological need. Real play can actually transform work, inject excitement and newness, help us deal with difficulties more effectively. They promote a sense of mastery and ultimately lead to lasting joy and satisfaction. The benefits are huge.
So it's essential, not frivolous.
Exactly. And the source links play directly to rest, which is another area where we really struggle. So many of us seem to believe that exhaustion is a status symbol of hard work and that sleep is a luxury.
Guilty as charged sometimes.
Right. But the CDC findings she quotes offer some stark details. Insufficient sleep is linked to chronic diseases like diabetes, heart disease, obesity, depression, and drowsy driving. It's as dangerous as driving while intoxicated. Yet those gremlins still whisper, don't they? Just one more hour of work, you can catch up on sleep this weekend. Napping is for slackers. Just push through, you can handle it.
Yeah, those tapes play loud. She makes this really interesting comparison between our actual ingredients for joy and meaning and our typical dream list. What does that reveal?
It's quite revealing. She lists the real ingredients for joy and meaning. Things like adequate sleep, working out, healthy food, actual time off, being present with kids, even just time to piddle or potter around. Then she contrasts that with the typical dream list.
Yeah.
Bigger house, fancy trips, higher salary, more professional achievement.
Things that cost money or demand more work.
Exactly. The dream list mostly required more money and more spending, and ultimately did nothing in terms of making our life fuller in a meaningful way. And she shares her family's decision to limit their daughter Ellen's extracurricular activities. It highlights that intense pressure, even on kids, to be constantly busy, constantly achieving, just to get into the right college. It forces the question, what if we're normal and quiet and happy? Does that count? It really challenges that equation of busyness equals worth.
Challenging indeed. Next, calm and stillness. This guidepost makes a powerful distinction. It's not about being anxiety-free, which might be impossible, but anxiety-aware.
Right. Managing it, not eliminating it.
She shares her own experience with intense anxiety that literally forced her body to stop. That made her realize, I don't need to figure out a way to keep going with this level of anxiety. I need to figure out how to be less anxious. So how do calm and stillness help with that?
Calm, as she defines it, is about creating perspective and mindfulness while managing emotional reactivity. It's about being slow to respond and quick to think. Pausing to ask, do we even have all the information we need to make a decision or form a response yet?
Building in that pause.
Yes. She quotes Harriet Lerner, anxiety is extremely contagious, but so is calm. Our own calm can influence others. Practicing calm can involve really small things, like literally counting to 10 before reacting or saying, I'm not sure, I need to think about this some more. Identifying your specific emotional triggers is key to developing less reactive responses. She mentions a commercial showing parents practicing difficult conversations as a way of modeling calm for their kids.
Modeling is powerful. And stillness.
Stillness, she says, is maybe less complicated conceptually, but often more difficult to put into practice. It's not about emptying your mind or focusing on nothingness. It's about creating a clearing. It's opening up an emotionally clutter-free space and allowing ourselves to feel and think and dream and question.
Creating space. What stops us from doing that? What are the barriers? And what was her solution?
The big barriers. One is the fear that if we actually stop moving, the truth of our lives will invariably catch up with us. We keep busy to avoid facing things.
Runaway train.
Yeah. Another is confusing childhood messages, like parents screaming, calm down, instead of actually modeling calmness. Her personal solution involved what she called an anxiety detox, consciously bringing in more calm, more stillness, more exercise, and less caffeine. She also uses Dr. Lerner's concepts of overfunctioners and underfunctioners.
How does that relate to anxiety?
Overfunctioners, under stress, tend to jump in, advise, rescue, micromanage. Underfunctioners tend to become less competent, maybe become the problem child or the one who needs rescuing. These are patterned anxiety responses. Recognizing them not as fixed personality traits, but as learned behaviors we resort to under stress means we can start to change them.
Seeing them as patterns, not identity. Okay. Meaningful work. The source notes her work is about finding and naming the subtle and often unspoken connections. And she found that wholehearted living involves engaging in meaningful work, sometimes called a calling. But she initially found this concept messy and tangled. Why? What were the complicating words or ideas?
Yeah, it got tangled up with a whole pesky list of words, as she calls them. Gifts and talents, spirituality, making a living, commitment, supposed to self-doubt. All these things swirl around the idea of meaningful work.
How do they intertwine?
Well, she details how she came to believe that using our gifts and talents with the world is the most powerful source of connection with God, or spirit, or however you frame that. But it also requires a tremendous amount of commitment. Because meaningful work, that calling, often doesn't directly pay all the bills. People often have to piece it together. And crucially, no one can define what's meaningful for us. It's deeply individual. The supposed to, that's the voice of fitting in perfectionism, telling us what we think we should do or be, rather than listening to what truly makes us feel alive.
And what about the specific barriers, those gremlins that get in the way of finding and doing meaningful work?
Self-doubt is a huge one. It just undermines the process of finding our gifts and sharing them. The gremlins taunt with very specific lines. Maybe everyone has special gifts, except for you. Or, yeah, you do that well, but that's not really a gift. It's not big enough or important enough.
Minimizing our talents.
Exactly. She tells the story of the accountant jeweler, a woman who was a CPA but also made beautiful jewelry she sold. But she'd introduce herself as a CPA, qualifying that she was not a real jeweler. That's the self-doubt talking. Brené admits she struggled for years to call herself a writer. Overcoming that self-doubt is all about believing we're enough and letting go of what the world says we're supposed to be and supposed to call ourselves.
Believing we're enough. Back to worthiness.
Always. And she ends that section with Howard Thurman's powerful quote, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive."
Love that. Okay, last guidepost. Laughter, song, and dance. She mentions Barbara Ehrenreich's idea of collective ecstasy, that innate human impulse to share joy together. Why are laughter, song, and dance so important? And what holds us back?
These acts of expression, laughing freely, singing out loud, dancing without inhibition, are often avoided precisely because they feel so vulnerable.
No.
Laughter can make us feel a little out of control, she notes. Singing out loud can make some of us feel self-conscious. And dancing. She says dancing is literally full-body vulnerability. It's like being naked, she puts it graphically. So much so that many people just won't dance at all because that vulnerability feels crushing.
Full body vulnerability. Yeah, I can see that. What do the gremlins say here?
Oh, they're right there whispering, "What will people think? Everyone is watching. Calm down. You look ridiculous. Get a hold of yourself." She observes that women often fear being seen as too loud or out of hand. Whoa, settle down. Men often fear being perceived as out of control or looking like, well, assholes on the dance floor.
So it comes down to that worthiness hustle again, trying to manage perceptions.
Exactly. The desire to appear cool and always in control. These are just more worthiness hustles. They're like emotional and behavioral straitjackets we put on to minimize perceived vulnerability. Being cool reduces the risk of ridicule. Being in control is all about managing how others see us.
And she regrets holding back herself.
Yeah, she shares her own experience of missing out by pretending to be cool. Specifically, her fear of looking goofy and awkward, which stopped her from trying things like yoga or hip-hop classes she might have enjoyed. And she makes this really important point. When we betray ourselves by holding back these passionate, goofy, heartfelt, and soulful expressions, we don't just betray ourselves. We often then betray the people we love by not being able to tolerate that same freedom and expression in them.
Wow. Our own lack of freedom limits how we let others be free.
Exactly. The Hopi saying she includes, "To watch us dance is to hear our hearts speak," just perfectly summarizes the profound detail, the deep meaning contained in these seemingly simple expressions of our true selves. Outro.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's just so clear that this journey to wholehearted living, the way Brené Brown explores it in such detail, it's not some simple, 10-step program.
No, definitely not.
It's really an invitation to a kind of personal revolution. And it requires, well, a pretty profound level of self-awareness and very intentional ongoing practice. It's all about letting go of those layers of supposed to and really embracing every messy, imperfect detail of who you authentically are.
And this deep dive really reminds us that meaningful change is a process. It's often uncomfortable. It definitely feels risky sometimes, but it's so profoundly worthwhile. The real risk, she argues, is in not embracing our imperfections, not cultivating that authenticity. As she puts it, what's the greater risk? Letting go of what people think or letting go of who we are?
That really puts it in perspective. Ultimately, this whole exploration emphasizes that core message. My story matters because I matter. It's about finding the courage somehow to celebrate those intensely joyful moments too, even if we've been taught that savoring happiness is just tempting fate,
Absolutely. Yes, it's about making that choice to be brave, afraid, and very, very alive all at the same time. It's a call to actually take those practical, dig deep steps we talked about. Get deliberate, get inspired, get going. Maybe start by just identifying one small, specific detail in your life, your day, where you could apply one of these principles. Because it really is in those granular moments, those small shifts, that the biggest transformations begin. So maybe the question for you listening is, what small detail of your life will you choose to transform first, starting today?